الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين ثم أما بعد. First of all, I'd like to apologize for my lateness. I was on my way here and I realized in packing the children I forgot the laptop, so I had to go back and get it. Because I didn't want to miss out on anything that I've put in my notes at least, that I intended to share with all of you, inshallah ta'ala. First and foremost, I'd like to share with you that what I'm presenting here are my own thoughts and they're not necessarily absolute in any way. The purpose, the primary intent of this discussion is to actually facilitate food for thought. So all of us are thinking, inshallah ta'ala, about certain issues, and perhaps if we think about them sincerely and together, hopefully we'll come to certain kinds of solutions and address certain challenges that the Muslims are facing. So again, I don't claim to have the answers to the problems, but certainly I'd like to highlight some areas of problems. And as many of you know, this session is dedicated to understanding some of the challenges that the Ummah is facing, especially the Ummah living here in the United States, in the West. And some of the, what are some of the things we can do to try and address those problems. This is a very rhetorical, almost slogan type of statement. What is the problem of the Ummah? Right? And it's sometimes we actually have a very deep, profound answer, but the answer also seems like a slogan. Well, the problem of the Ummah is a lack of Iman. If we really had Iman, then we would be okay. And it seems like that's an oversimplification, but I'd like to start with the fact that that in fact is a very deep and profound answer to the problem of the Ummah. Allah Azza wa Jal has made very categorical statements about this fact. Allah Azza wa Jal, for example, has told us in a context in Surah Al-Imran where Muslims are suffering defeat. He's told us, وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَا إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. Don't be grieved, don't be weakened, don't be grieved, don't be sad. You are going to be the ones who are supreme. You're going to be the highest ones, if in fact you are true believers. If in fact you truly have Iman. So the acquisition of Iman has something to do with the Muslims being supreme, or them not being in a situation of humiliation and weakness. And of course, when Allah Azza wa Jalla talks about the kinds of humiliation that the Bani Israel suffered, they were also a nation that could have, had they wanted, Allah would have sent blessings upon them from the sky, and Allah talks about that in the Qur'an. But then what does Allah address as their problem? He says, ثُمَّ قَسَتْ قُلُوبُكُم مِّن بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ. Your hearts became hard. The hearts were empty of Iman. The Iman was not there. Similarly, I'm sure you've heard this phrase before that it seems like the Ummah is dead, or the spirit of the Ummah is dead, or it's like it's sleeping and things like that. And Allah Azza wa Jalla, interestingly in the Qur'an, compares people whose Iman is empty to people who are actually dead. And He compares people whose Iman, whose faith has come back to life, to like plants that come out of the dead earth. So Allah Azza wa Jalla, for example, in Surah Al-Hadid, He says, فَقَسَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ وَكَثِيرٌ مِّنْهُمْ فَاسِقُونَ. People of the book before us, their hearts became hard and most of them are corrupt. That's what He makes a statement about them. And then He says, اعلموا أن الله يحيي الأرض بعد موتها. You should know Allah gives life to the earth after it had died. In other words, first He talked about the hearts being hard, and all of a sudden He says, you should know, by the way, Allah can bring the earth back to life. In other words, you should know your hearts can also be brought back to life. The Iman in your hearts can be revived as well. But though this is a deep response, sometimes we don't look at it in a deep way. When we say that the problem of our Ummah is a lack of Iman, we don't really address that problem in a meaningful, in a deep enough way. That's at least my thought on it. And so what I want to share with you is that this idea of reviving the Iman, the faith of the Ummah, you can at the very least divide it into three things. This is a spiritual problem, which is I think most people understand. When you say it's a problem of the heart, it's a spiritual problem. The second thing is that it's an intellectual problem. And a lot of people don't give that much attention. Iman is not just a spiritual thing, it is also an intellectual thing. It's something that we are convinced of intellectually as well. And finally, as a result of both of those things, this is a moral problem. In other words, when someone actually benefits from the fruits of Iman, then what comes out of them is this high standard of morality and ethics. Right? They become a person of high character. Right? So when Allah Azza wa Jal, for example, talks about people of Iman, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, He mentions very high ethical characteristics of them, you know. So these three things, a spiritual problem, an intellectual problem, and then a moral problem. The one that gets the least attention, at least as far as I've seen, Wallahu ta'ala a'lam, is the intellectual problem. Though we have to address all three of them. For purposes of this discussion, what I'd like to say is that the personality of the human being, the way we make decisions, Allah Azza wa Jal has divided it into two faculties. And both of these faculties are talked about in the Qur'an. Though as far as psychology is concerned, there are even more faculties. These are the two I'm going to highlight before you today. There's the heart and there's the mind. So Allah Azza wa Jal challenges the mind of the people, and He says, أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ أَفَلَا تَتَفَكَّرُونَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. Right? You know, وَهُمْ يَشْعُرُونَ يَعْرِفُونَ. These words are used for the intellect. To understand, to think deeply, to reflect, to ponder. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Don't they reflect deeply on the Qur'an? These are intellectual kinds of exercises. But at the same time, Allah Azza wa Jal talks about the dhikr, the remembrance of Allah, the taqwa of Allah, the iman in Allah, removing doubts, and all of these matters, as the Qur'an talks about them, are matters of the heart. So you've got two things to worry about. You've got the heart to worry about and the mind to worry about as far as Allah Azza wa Jalla in the Qur'an is concerned. Now, again, just laying the foundation for what is going to be, inshallah, a long discussion. One of the founding things I want to share with you is that the Christian community, as described in the Qur'an, were people that had very soft hearts. These were people that, you know, remember Allah, and Allah Azza wa Jalla talks about how they are people of soft hearts. And at the same time, what they abandoned was the intellectual dimension.